Here are 5 under-the-radar anime for winter 2025 in no particular order, although number 1 is my favorite. As always, every show has less than 100,000 views on Mall as of the time of recording. Number 5, From Bureaucrat to Villainess, Dad's Been Reincarnated. This was my favorite new series of the winter for a while, until a series of events with a couple of shows that I'll talk about later. But I still love this one. The main character in this show is a 52-year-old bureaucrat named Kenzaburo who has a fateful encounter with Truck-kun and wakes up reincarnated as the Villainess of his daughter's favorite otome game. It's pretty rare to get an anime protagonist who's older than me these days, so I was always going to be interested in this one, but thankfully the show itself is quite well done, and it's really funny in places. You could argue that the protagonist is younger than me, since the bureaucrat is now a high school-aged noble girl named Grace Salverne. But her mind is that of a benevolent 52-year-old Japanese dad, complete with dad joke humor that helps her relate to one of her classmates later on. The story is set in a magic academy in an 18th or 19th century European-style fantasy setting. Kenzaburo still has all of Grace's memories from growing up as a villainess, but he has such a fatherly soul that he can't help but treat everyone kindly and try to bring out the best in them. He even tries to be as villainous-like as possible for Grace's sake. He wants to be true to the life that he has taken over. But his well-meaning evil intentions always end up backfiring and instead make him more beloved by everyone around him, usually without him even noticing. It's been a lot of fun watching him flawlessly trip over the game's challenges into becoming the most adored person of the Academy, despite his best efforts at occasional villainy. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it yet. Number 4, Ameku MD, Dr. Detective. This one has been growing on me more and more. Dr. Ameku is kind of a despicable character in the first episode, but they've been reining in some of her more human-hating characteristics recently, so it's been more pleasant to follow along. Takao Ameku is the head of the Department of Investigative Pathology at Tenakai General, a hospital founded by her grandfather. This means that she tries to find the causes of diseases that other departments are unable to diagnose. I will say that if you glaze over when medical terms get thrown around, then this show can be a hard sell. It goes pretty heavy on the jargon, especially in the first episode, so it's more geared towards people who are already fans of medical dramas or who have some familiarity with medicine. Dr. Ameku and her young assistant Kodori go around solving medical mysteries that of course only the genius doctor is capable of solving. The characters in the show don't bring a lot to the table, at least early on, but the mysteries are where the show really shines, especially when it leans into the doctor part of Dr. Detective. This is a mystery show that actually provides enough clues for the audience so they can make some educated guesses about how to solve the case, even though most of the cases are elaborate enough or rare enough that you'll still be surprised by most of the reveals. But I'm still totally going to brag about guessing the right diagnosis for the cursed video episode. This show should be pretty easy to determine if you should check it out or not. If medical mysteries are your thing, then it's for you. If not, then maybe this next one is a better fit. Number 3, Welcome to Japan, Ms. Elf. The premise of this show is that Kazuhiro Kitase works a 9-to-5 job as a salaryman and then goes home to sleep. Except that in his dreams, he's transported to a fantasy world where he can live an exciting life going on adventures with his cute elf friend. He then wakes up and resumes his life in Japan. Due to events in the dream world, one time he wakes up only to find that Ms. Elf, whose name is Marie, has been transported back to Japan with him. And of course, she wakes up in his bed naked, as mandated by anime law. The show is at its best when they're in Japan, and Marie is fascinated by all her new encounters in this strange modern world. It's a tried and true formula that still works here. The problem is that they're not always in Japan. Episode 3 takes place almost entirely in the fantasy world, which seems much blander by comparison. There's just not enough time to develop this fantasy world in any meaningful way if you're only going to give it partial attention in a 12-episode season. This means that the parts of the show that take place there are mostly in a generic fantasy setting that we know almost nothing about. It worked in episode 2 because the fantasy world was more like a layover stop so that they could pick up a new character. And I think that's what they're doing with the next arc as well, but I hope that the show can figure out the right balance for when they're in the fantasy world and how much time they spend in Japan. Because when things are going right, this is a fun anime with a lot of potential. Number 2, I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time. The premise of this show could have led to a half-baked generic fantasy show, but they've been able to skirt some of the pitfalls that I was worried about so far. All that receptionist Alina Clover wants is to clock into her job, do her time, and then get out of there as quickly as she can to give herself as much alone time as possible. I was worried that this would mean that the show would be about Alina beating up a different bad guy each week and then going home to soak in her tub, which would mean that the cast would remain quite small and that the other characters wouldn't get any development since Alina tries to keep to herself. But they've arranged the plot in a way that not only does Alina reluctantly begin to interact more regularly with other people in her world, but we get more of the lore of that world than I was expecting. It also doesn't hurt that Alina can do a killer impression of Tifa from FF7. The reason why Alina is able to solo any boss is built right into the magic system of this world. And the series has a surprising mix of drama and comedy, with more violence than I was expecting from a lighthearted comedy show. It seems as though Guild Receptionist has some loftier goals than I initially gave it credit for, and I'm intrigued to see if it can pull it off, or if it can at least maintain the decent quality that it has shown so far. I doubt we'll ever see the full story animated, with the light novels are still ongoing, but if they can find a good stopping point for this first season, then the show will be able to stand out as one of those long-titled fantasy anime that are actually worth watching. Maybe. Tasukari Hotel. Even though there's one more full recommendation left, we can't go any farther without talking about Tasukari Hotel. Tasukari Hotel was my sleeper hit of the season in the first version of this video. Visually, it's pretty ugly. There's no other way to say it, and I instantly disliked the protagonist's voice. But by the end of the second episode, I was hooked on the mystery format and the show's ability to build tension surprisingly well. And then it went off the rails in episode 4. Tasukari Hotel is about a girl named Neko Sukahara. Yes, her name is Neko, which means cat in Japanese. Neko finds herself in a strange hotel that is perched somewhere between the living world and the afterlife. People show up there with no memory of who they are, or even knowing if they're alive or dead. Their hotel rooms will have objects from their outside life that will change from time to time as they recover more of their memories. Once they remember who they are and whether they're alive or dead, they can leave the hotel to either go back to their lives or continue on into the afterlife. One of the more interesting features of the show is that characters will have their faces replaced with some other object until they can remember their names. So you might see someone wandering around with a tarot card for a head, for example. The reason why this show is a maybe is that there's a huge tonal shift in episode 4 from a relatively lighthearted mystery show to one that delves into intense moral dilemmas with way more disturbing images. To describe what I mean, I have to spoil some of the show. So I'm going to put the spoiler parts in black and white, so that way you'll know when it's over if you want to skip this next section. In episode 4, two girls get into a fight and wrestle over a katana. One of the girls grabs the blade to try to keep the other girl from stabbing her, but the other girl is too strong and pushes the blade straight through the neck of the other girl, and they show all of it. Because of her actions, the girl is swallowed up by the portal to hell. But here's the thing. The fight was started because of misinformation that they got from a serial killer who's now working at the hotel. So this murderer lies to these girls and causes one of them to end up in hell, which I'm pretty sure is permanent, and he gets away with it completely. So because of all that, I can't recommend Tasukari Hotel for everyone, but I am going to keep watching it myself just to see how crazy it gets. Fortunately though, because I had to take one of my full recommendations off the list, I decided to give another show a chance, and that show is number 1, Medalist. I can't believe how good this show is. I did not want to watch Medalist. A little girl taking figure skating lessons? No thanks. But after Tasukari Hotel took a turn for the bizarre, I decided to at least watch the first episode. I ended up tearing through all 4 available episodes in one sitting. That's not true. I watched the first 2, then I watched Squid Game and ate a maple bar, and then I finished the last 2 episodes. But it was all part of one motion. I loved the opening scene of Medalist. I thought they excelled at giving a cinematic depiction of motion, though some people have complained about the CGI, so your mileage might vary. Most of the other scenes are more standard anime fare, but the show can look fantastic when it wants to. It also has likable characters, arrogant villains, and a lot more humor than I expected. More than anything, the show is just plain fun. It's like being wrapped in a warm blanket or whatever cozy cliche you want to use. This show just puts me in a good mood after I watch it. And that's not just from the super cute and super catchy end credits. Inori is a little girl who wants to become a world-class figure skater, but she has no idea how to go about doing this. Tsukasa is a former ice dancer who's trying to find work that'll keep him around the ice skating scene. When the two meet up, Tsukasa decides to coach Inori into a great skater and to motivate her to find the confidence she needs for skating and for life in general. Inori is a bundle of cuteness, but everyone in the show has loads of charm and personality, even when they're being bad-tempered or stubborn. Except for Ryo Sonodori, but he doesn't have much screen time so far. Anyway, there's something really rewarding about seeing people start from a place of low confidence to reach a point where they believe in themselves and reach goals they never thought possible before. We see this happen quickly with Inori as she progresses through her figure skating training, but we also get to see a little bit of Tsukasa's growth as he learns how to be a coach. I know a lot of people are going to write off this show as soon as they hear figure skating or little girl protagonist, but this is seriously my favorite show of the winter. If you like feel-good shows or shows that animate motion well, then give Medalist a chance. If you know of another show that I should check out, then let me know in the comments. Winter can be a slow season for anime, but I hope you find something in this list that grabs your interest. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.